And Jeff, we are so excited to have you, my friend. Thank you for being here. I'm going to exit out and let you take over and run this talk.
Wow, I am excited to be here. I can't even wrap my mind around the fact that I'm here right now and just have the opportunity to share with you guys some things that I think can change your lives. If not yours, then the lives of people around you. So stick with me. I hope we're going to have a lot of fun and get a lot out of this. Thanks, Travis, for the great introduction. I really appreciate that. I want to start out and just throw out a couple of statistics that I read yesterday to you guys. We have between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. 98% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that you had yesterday. Imagine that. Here's what's really a kicker, though, is that 80% of those 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts are negative. That's 10,000 to about 50,000 thoughts a day are negative, which means that you're having about 6 to 33 thoughts per minute that are negative. Holy crap, I don't know about you guys, but that just doesn't sound like a very fun existence. It sounds pretty negative to me. And frankly, as you heard Travis talk about, that was my existence for most of my adult life. It really started to come to a head, and I imagine a lot of you like me are business owners, own your own businesses, or are running your own entities. And that's where it really started to show up for me. When I started my catering business, I bought it from my dad back in 2012. He was about $100,000 a year in revenue, seasonal business, October to November. We did all outside cooking, and he got me to buy it from him in January of 2012. And I grew it, just did some marketing changes, changed the website, took over the sales, and we went to 175,000. I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. But we need a bigger space. We're running out of space. So I had to look for a commercial kitchen. We found that attached to a 22,000 square foot event center. And I always tell people that that decision was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life and one of the worst I've ever made in my life. From a purely economic and business standpoint, I had no business whatsoever being in that building. Told you we were at about 175,000 in revenue the year before we moved in there. Didn't even understand how to calculate this at the time, but we've since learned that our break-even number based on our profit margins at that time was about $2.4 million. Just to break even, we needed revenues of $2.4 million. Now, through a lot of hard work, we've been able to lower that to $2 million. However, we're just prior to the pandemic, we were just starting to crack that $2 million mark. So you can imagine the pressure and the stress that was caused by that. Now, we had a great owner who owned that building at first, but he was only one of 27, and he helped me out a lot. Then he passed away. And when he passed away, the new owners, they weren't as helpful, and they ended up selling. We moved into that building in April of 2013, and by August of 2013, and Tony, the owner, had been really great and set us up where we weren't going to make any lease payments until December, but they were going to be about $9,000 a month for lease payments. And in August, I'm sitting down looking at my checkbook, looking at what we got on the books for upcoming events, and looking at the number of leads that weren't coming in. And I said, oh my God, I'm about to lose everything. I'm going to go to my wife. I'm going to have to tell her that I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be divorced. I'm going to be out. These are all those negative thoughts that were going through my head at the time. And it about destroyed me, just that moment. Luckily, I ended up finding a business coach, and that's where things started to change, but it's been a long, slow road. You see, all of that, and during that time period, and for many years after, I was super negative. I was tell me if you guys have ever experienced this, waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, just full of worry and dread and wondering how you're going to make it. That was me almost every single night. Couldn't get to sleep. If I did, I was up multiple times. I can remember sitting on my couch many, many evenings, playing solitaire, just trying to somehow console myself, kind of doing the rock, right? So up all night worrying. That caused me to be real mean and short-tempered. One of the things was, too, I was really hyper-vigilant. And that hypervigilance led me to looking out for danger in all sorts of places. Like somebody was willing to help me, and then I would start worrying about what's their ulterior motive? How are they going to screw me over? I was just constantly looking for danger everywhere. I was judgmental. At one point, I even, nicknamed myself, as I started learning about this, Dr. Doom. It was my judgment name, Dr. Doom, because that's what I always looked for. If I had to anticipate sales, we needed like, say, 200,000 of sales this quarter. My mind always went to what's going to happen when we don't make it. It never went to imagining how great it's going to be when we do make it. So you can see where my focus was, and guess what? It was a rare day when we ever made it. It was blind luck. What I'm describing right now, if this isn't you, it probably describes someone in your family, someone on your team, someone among your friends. That negativity, that pessimism, that anxiety that we feel, that angst that we're constantly feeling when things aren't working out the way we'd like them to work out. The question is why? Why do we feel that way? The other question is, what can we do about it? Why should we do something about it? I want to address that one first. Why should we do something about it? You see, as leaders, and I would imagine that a lot of you guys watching on this, and in fact, all of you watching this are leaders in some capacity, whether it's in your family, your church, among your friends, but you're constantly trying to influence someone else, whether it's on your team or in your family. As leaders, I think we have a responsibility to be kind and gentle, positive and optimistic, and to actually help and lift people up. So I think that that's really hard to do when you're a negative, pessimistic person. How does all of this negativity impact the workplace, home? I mean, it really, you heard in my kind of description bio that Travis read, it made me really negative. People would see me coming, and I swear that they would turn around and just pray, gosh, I hope Jeff doesn't see me coming, because they wouldn't want to engage with me, because they never knew, is he in a good mood? I was only in a good mood when things were going well, and I was in a really crappy mood when things weren't, and we were experiencing a lot of things not going well for us. So it really can have a big impact on your relationships. Before we go any further, I want to tell you that I really have a joy about me today, and you heard that in my bio. I've been through one of the worst tragedies a human being can go through, and that's the loss of our 17-year-old son. And it's been just over a year ago. Last November 12th, Waylon passed away. That's why we started, you heard Travis talk about the Waylon James Foundation, and I hope to talk about that a little bit later. But despite that, and frankly, because of everything that I'd been through prior to that, all the problems and overcoming that I'd done, that led me to this place where I could actually be the leader my family needed me to be and help us through this time and not make it worse. And so I'm really, really happy that I was able to be in this position, even though it's been really hard. And you'll understand in a few minutes why this is so important to the rest of the conversation. But going back, why does this happen? Why are we so negative, pessimistic? Why are some of us just geared that way? And frankly, a lot of us are. And one of the things I know is that we have this survival mode. Our evolution kind of set us up back in a time it served us when we were part of the food chain. And, we had to worry about rustling in the leaves and is it a tiger about to pounce on us? And we couldn't be wrong. If we were wrong, we were dead. So we developed this idea of fight, flight, or freeze. Even back then, we didn't understand it. It's just what happened. It's what happens to all the animals when they're faced with the survival situation. They have to decide in a moment, are they going to fight it? Are they going to flee it? Or are they just going to freeze and hope that they're not noticed? Like I said, that served us really well back then, but it doesn't serve us so well today because most of the dangers that invoke that aren't a threat to our survival. And it actually makes it harder for us. So that would be one reason why we have this kind of negative, pessimistic outlook. Another reason, and what I've learned, you heard Travis mention my podcast, the #LEADA podcast, and in that, that stands for Love is the Answer. And what I do is I talk to guests about, who are demonstrating how love and kindness are changing their world and the world around them, how just being a nice human can help people and help them. And through that, I've come up with two recurring themes. One of them is the impact of trauma on our life. Trauma is what invokes that survival mode, and then it sticks with us. And there's lots of research and stuff about that. The other thing is this idea of self-love and how much self-love is missing from people's lives. And I'm hearing that over and over again from professionals in the mental health industry, from folks who have been talking to me about their previous addictions or previous problems and how they've overcome. And what got them there was really a lot of trauma and a lot of lack of self-esteem. So trauma, you know, what we know about that now, it's not, we think a lot of times that it's the wartime, you know, being in something, you know, you're in a war or something like that and you get traumatized, abuse, different things like that can, you know, somebody maybe a near death experience can be traumatic. What we're finding though is that it's also just could be something that happened when you were a baby that you don't even remember. It can be the fact that you were ignored, left in your crib to cry, perhaps even. All of these things can be traumatic experiences. In fact, learning about the death of a loved one can be traumatic. For me, I was traumatized the night that Waylon died. I knew this a day when I had to recount what happened, and my anxiety went through the roof, and there was no reason why. And I finally realized that it was probably because I had told the story, and that brought me back to that night, and it gave me all those same feelings. So I ended up going to see a professional and got a little bit of help. There's lots of help out there on trauma and how to process it. And I went through this, and what used to give me a 9, 10, actually an 11 in anxiety when talking about it has since gone down to where now it's maybe a 3. Like just now, you know, I don't like talking about it, but it only gives me a 3. And then once I've been through it, it kind of dissipates. So I would recommend, you know, explore that. Explore if trauma has had an impact on your life. If you've been through something and you don't understand it. As a matter of fact, one of my upcoming episodes is going to be about a case of sexual abuse that I went through as a child. And I've often wondered what kind of impact did that have on me? I don't know, and I don't see it, but I'm sure it has impacted me. So I wanted to explore that. It's those types of things that I want people to be aware of, is how these traumatic events can impact us years later, and we don't even connect the dots on how it's happening. The next one is self-esteem, and there's lots of books, lots of things out there, but if you are lacking a love for yourself and a feeling of self-worth and a feeling of you are loved, we got to fix that. And I would recommend getting in touch with me, because I want to tell you, I have enough love to go around. It's overflowing all the time, and I can help you feel that love, no charge. It's free. I love to do that. Every single one of us, I don't care who you are, is worthy of love. And you've got to recognize that. It's one of our biggest stumbling blocks. So what can we do about any of this? We kind of see what's happening, why it's happening, where it's coming from. What can we do? I want to introduce to you 3 things. I discovered this when I Googled how to be happy. If you Google that, you're going to find about 1,000,001 websites and about 10 million ideas around why to be happy. I started to kind of look at these lists: 7 ways to be happy, 33 ways to improve your happiness today. And I started to compile and keep track of which ones showed up. And there were 3 that by far exceeded everything else. Number 1 is relationships, cultivating good relationships. So do that. Good, kind, loving relationships. Do what you have to do to make your relationships authentic and good. There's lots of stuff out there teaching you how to do that. And what's kind of fun is that the next 2 things I'm going to tell you will actually help your relationships. Number 2 is gratitude. Now, I know we hear that all the time. Gratitude, gratitude. You got to be thankful for things. It is so true. So true. If you don't believe me, do some research. Martin Seligman, who's like the father of positive psychology, did some experiments with gratitude. It's unreal. It shifts your focus. It shifts you from thinking about what's negative to thinking about what's positive. When you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, are you going to focus on how bad everything is? What if it's raining out? You could actually focus on the fact you're sitting in a car staying dry. You could focus that you're in a car. You don't have some horse and buggy, you know, with droppings all over the floor. If it's hot here in Minnesota, if it's 20 below, you got heat. We can shift our focus, and that shifting of focus helps to create a different story for your life. Number 3 is develop a positive and optimistic mindset. Now, I know there's lots of people out there who think, man, if I don't worry, then I'm going to get blindsided. Or people who are positive and optimistic, they're living in some kind of la la land. It's all unicorns and rainbows. But I want to tell you that's not the case. I'm positive and optimistic, and I know problems exist. The difference is that I now know that no matter what, there is always a way. I can figure it out. I can always overcome, go underground, over whatever. I can overcome my obstacles. And that's the big difference, is that I see obstacles now as something that's helping to make me stronger, helping me to grow. And you don't get that by never having problems. You get stronger by facing and overcoming problems. So they're here to help us, and I don't have any illusions about that. But I want to share with you what I call the 3 gifts. And I got this out of this book right here, Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. Awesome, awesome book. But in that are 3 gifts technique. And the 3 gifts are real fast. Is all you have to do whenever you're facing a negative circumstance, when you're not feeling really good and happy, and it's caused by a person or a circumstance, sit down and force yourself to write down what are 3 gifts that can come from this situation. Now, I want to tell you, I used to struggle with that. I used to struggle because I was always worried somebody out there in the audience would raise their hand and say, well, what about the death of a loved one? But I want to tell you, I actually did this right after Waylon died. I came into this office, sat down at this desk right here, and I forced myself to write down 3 gifts. Now, writing that down didn't change any fact, but what it did is just a tiny, tiny little shift in my perspective, in my focus again. Instead of being bound up in everything that was wrong and bad and only seeing bad come out of this, I could just ever so slightly start seeing that there could be some positives that could come out of this situation. That has had a tremendous impact, and it can be done for any and all circumstances. I promise you, I've lived it. I wish I would have saved the piece of paper, but I didn't. But it's so critical to cultivating that positive mindset. So there you got it. 3 things that you can do: cultivate your relationships, show gratitude, focus on gratitude, and do the 3 gifts technique. Write down what are 3 good things that can come out of this. Because mental health is so, so important. There are people out there today, you may be among them, who are really suffering living this life, who don't see a life of thriving. And mental health is on this spectrum from one end, where everything's great, to the other end where we have some diagnosed mental illness. And then in between is all sorts of stuff, just stinking thinking. That's what I had, stinking thinking. And where does all that come from? And what makes it so hard for people to get help is a lot of how we talk about it, a lot of what's in the media. My son, Waylon, was having some mental health struggles. And for him, he used to get so upset with me when he would talk about his mental illness and say, there's something wrong with me. And he didn't want to tell doctors. And I would say, Waylon, if you went to the doctor for a heart problem, it wouldn't be a big deal. We don't get embarrassed by that. But Waylon was actually actively trying to lie to the people trying to help him because of the stigma around mental health. So one of the big things that it's going to take is let's change our level of consciousness around mental health. Pay attention to the movies and the media. Pay attention to your own language, saying things like loony bin, psycho, crazy, all of these things. And I'm not blaming anyone. I've been a part of it. But these things, we don't even realize what an impact they're making on our unconscious belief system. And then that comes up in our conscious thinking and our behaviors. So really think about how you're bringing in information. The next thing is, let's have the courage to be vulnerable. And we're seeing that more and more in society, where people are telling us that they've got a mental illness, that they've struggled with anxiety, depression, or whatever it is. And they're showing some vulnerability. Brene Brown has done a tremendous job of teaching us about the courage that's needed for vulnerability. And I think it's going to be a huge, huge thing as more and more people become comfortable talking about their problems and their mental health issues. So that's it. Those are the 3 things you can do. That's what I think is causing a lot of yuck in this world. And I just want to be a resource to help as many people as possible to overcome whatever struggles they're facing. Thank you very much.